Hello, everyone. Welcome. We are going to get started here in just under maybe a half a minute. Give a moment for some folks to join. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're joining from. If you are online here, we have our very own Matt Goodrich in our chat as our community coordinator today. So say hello in the chat. Let us know where you're joining from. Tell us what the weather's like, where you're at, what you do for your job. I am also in the background going to open our first poll just so you can start participating in that. So check that out in the polls tab over on the right side of your screen. And we're going to get kicked off here with opening announcements while I have that going. So we only have 30 minutes today, so we're going to dive in here. A couple of quick reminders. Number one, connect with us through the chat like I just was talking about. Matt Goodrich from our team is in there. You can ask us questions. We'll try to get to some of those today. If we don't get to them, we will follow up with you after the webinar and address those directly with you over email. You can do that through the Q&A tab, or you can do it in the chat, and Matt will send it over to us on the Q&A tab. The webinar is being recorded, so it's going to go really fast, but there will be a recording sent to you tomorrow around the same time. So you don't have to take a bunch of notes or screenshots. You'll get the recording. And then additionally, we have a docs tab up on the right near the Q&A and polls tab. We have some great resources in there for you to explore some of the topics we'll unpack further. In addition, the LinkedIn profiles for our speakers today, our ASA experts, are in there too. So if you want to click through on those, you can open up and follow up with them after the webinar. So with that, let me go ahead and I want to bring up our two speakers today onto stage and see, let's see, Gera and Hamilton, if you can go ahead and click go on stage from your box. It looks like it won't let me do that right now. So click the option to go on stage and you'll be joining me shortly. Awesome. Welcome, Hamilton, Gera. Great. Let's go ahead and jump into quick intros for each of you, and then we'll get started with our discussion here. So Gera, let's start with you and then Hamilton.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm so excited to be here with you today, Jeff and Hamilton and everyone who is watching us now. My name is Gera. I have been working with Apple Search Ads and specifically with Search Ads Maven platform for about a year now. Apple Search Ads is an interesting, sometimes unpredictable channel, and I learn from it every day from different cases, from different clients, from Hamilton. Previously, I've been working with App Store optimization and review management, and basically organic side of performance marketing. And now I kind of switched my focus to paid search and Apple Search Ads, and it's a big and interesting journey for me.
Awesome. Good to have you. Hamilton.
Hey everybody, Hamilton Radcliffe, General Manager, Search Ads Maven, product by Kochava. I've been at Kochava for about 2.5 years now, and most of that has been as the General Manager on Search Ads Maven. I love the platform. I've been in and around the data of ad tech for a long time, and that's no exception here. I found myself deep diving into the way that Apple Search Ads works as an auction platform, looking at the data, and that analysis, that time that I've spent doing that, produces a lot of interesting strategies that we'll be sharing some of today. Thrilled to be here. Jeff, thanks for running this.
Yeah, of course. Well, let's see. I've got the audience poll that we launched here a couple minutes ago, and putting that back up on screen. If you haven't voted in that yet, let us know what your average monthly spend rate is on Apple Search Ads. This is some great intel to help us understand kind of the budget constraints or lack thereof that you have. And I will launch another poll here soon in the background where we dive into kind of how you're approaching your strategy for brand spend on Apple Search Ads as well. So interesting. Yeah, it looks like we've got a good spread here, and we've got a bucket of folks that aren't spending yet, but plan to start. So good intel. I will leave that open in the background and keep looking at that if you can and haven't voted yet. And let's dive in, and Hamilton, let's start with you and unpack the topic of the day. I know we have 3 different kind of approaches that you've seen and the folks you've encountered with ASA. So take it away, and I'll plow through the slides here as you speak.
Great, I'd love to dive in. So when we're talking to folks like yourselves about brand, we find that folks are in one of 3 different categories. We're going to go through each of those at a high level, then we'll dive into each one of them in more detail. Based on the spread of spend, even for those folks that are just getting started, this is a great set of strategies that's going to work. You're going to find, I believe, for just about anybody. When we look at brand strategies, what we find is that people oftentimes are in the strategy of, I want to win everything associated to my brand. That means they have a high bid and a large budget. Very common. The challenges that people face with that is that the last decile of impression share, that 90 to 100% decile, that costs the most by a lot. The other thing that's interesting is when you're winning all of your impressions, you're taking the oxygen out of the room for all of your competitors. So their bids affect your price, but the fact that you're winning everything, they don't have to feel any of the pressure of the high bid that they've put on that keyword. So by leaving it that way, they get to bid high and cause you to spend more without feeling any pressure. So that's the first category, very common. Second category, oftentimes people that have moved from that left category over to the exhausted budget daily, because what they've found is for some reason they've lowered their budget, or maybe they did an incremental study and they found that their brand spend wasn't as incremental as they thought. They've brought their daily budget down and they've left their bids relatively aggressive. So their bids are managed at a place that is running their budget through before the end of the day. So they run out of money. The challenges with this one is if you ran out of money yesterday, you can lower your bids today. That's universally true. That applies to anything brand or non-brand. It also applies to the non-keyword type ad placements. And if you are running on a budget, it probably means that your bid's too high. And it means that you're not getting as efficient use out of the dollars that you're spending. Now, the other challenge is that when you run out of budget, your bids come off, and that means that keyword, your brand, goes on sale for those latter half of the day for your competitors. So they pick it up for cheap. And if you're not in those two categories, then we find that you're probably in this forbidden brand zone. And these are folks that believe adamantly that brand spend is non-incremental and that brand protection is too expensive. We tend to side closer to this end of the spectrum than win everything, but there are definitely differences depending on what your brand is. For instance, if your brand is Kleenex and somehow you have an app on the phone, then everybody says Kleenex when they're talking about tissue paper. So you better believe Kleenex needs to be protecting their brand, and it would be incremental in that case. If you're FIFA, people are looking for FIFA. They're not looking for football, they're looking for FIFA. They'll step over that first ad no matter what it is to find what they're looking for. Two very different ends of the spectrum and two very different ends of the incremental discussion. When you're in this situation and you're not spending anything on brand, there's two key challenges here. One, it's a wasted opportunity to lose to a competitor and make it more expensive for them. So don't have no bid, have a losing bid. And then you know it's not maybe incremental for you, but you better believe your brand keyword is incremental for your competitors. And so giving them that keyword away for free, it just only improves the picture for those competitors that are bidding on it. Yeah. So those are the three categories.
Yeah, and I put up a poll in the background as you were unpacking that final third one just to see where the folks in the audience sit. So vote in that second poll. Let us know, are you in the win 100% impression share at all costs, fixed budget that runs out every day, maybe not spending on brand because you don't have the budget for it, or not spending because in your mind brand spend isn't worth it, or maybe some other category as well. So I will keep that open in the background. And interesting spread here. Looks like right now the majority is in the win 100% impression share at all costs, although, well, live results change. So maybe a tie between the first and second category. So that's very helpful. So let's unpack. You've got three really great scenarios that are specifically addressing context of like anecdotal evidence from each of these three categories. So in the first one, we've got this notion of win everything, but instead win almost everything. So can you speak through that, Hamilton, and let me know when you want me to go to the next slide?
Yeah, 100%. So when we're talking with you and you say your strategy is win everything, our recommendation to you is to win almost everything. So we have one case study here that gives a good illustration of what we do instead. So let's take a look at this graph. This is a case of a real customer. They've been a customer for a very long time, and they've been adamant about winning everything. And in fact, the reason that they were winning everything is our key contact said that if his boss were to do a search for their brand keyword and find that it was anybody else but them, she would come into his office and yell at him. So, organizational dysfunction was causing it, but it's a very real reason to continue to have that strategy. We finally convinced him to try something different, and this was the result. So you can see the sum of spend is the blue bars, the salmon colored is the sum of goal events, and then you have the line, which is the cost per goal. Not surprisingly, as we're moving the bid down, constantly looking at share of voice to make sure that they go down from the top decile, but not below the second to top decile, the 80 to 90%, that would be an indicator that we need to move the bid back up. As we do that, no surprise, the sum of spend goes down. Somewhat surprisingly is that the sum of goal events actually goes up. We see this way too often for that to be a coincidence, and I can't fully explain it. In some cases, it's because you're getting, you've been running close to your budget, and now you're able to spend more on impressions. Your impression count goes up, but it's very odd. If you were to do this, I would expect that the events stays the same. That's very common. The thing, when you have spend go down, the event count go up, you would not be surprised to see that the sum of the cost per goal goes down and to the right. So this is very common, and out of this, with exactly the same number of outcomes or more, they were spending less. Let's take a look at that summary slide here. Yeah, so on summary, their spend on a daily basis went down 14%, their daily events went up 14%, and their CPA went down 24%. So they didn't have to do much of anything other than allow them to move down from that top decile of impression share to the second top, and it was significantly more performant for them.
Yeah, and just to put it into a further context, in the notion of like a strategic losing, I think is what we term it, where instead of trying to win everything and having some really high bid, which we have a blog post in the docs tab that talks about like 4 brand traps to avoid on Apple search ads, but you don't have to set your max bid for those brand keywords at the highest level possible and win everything, because all that budget pressure from competitors is going to hit your ad dollars. So you might lose just a minuscule amount of impression share by bringing that bid way lower. But then at that point, your costs go way down, right? Because you're not getting hit with the pressure of everyone else's bids and your keywords, right?
Jeff, that's one of the weird things about this is that we do this, we get savings and spend, and sometimes you can't even measure the impact to share of voice, that it's so small, you stay in that top decile and you get all of the savings. It's a really powerful strategy to implement either on your own or with automation.
Yeah. Okay, we've got some great questions popping up here. We are going to try and get to some of those. Let's jump into example 2 or approach 2, which is, okay, you have a budget. You're not trying to win everything, and how do you do that more efficiently? So, Gera, would you unpack this one for us?
Yes, definitely. So this is, I believe, one of my favorite stories about one large quick service restaurant brand that approached us with the challenge of overspend on their brand campaigns. And after the initial analysis of their campaigns, we actually found out 3 main things. First, their daily budget exhausted every single day around 2 p.m., which basically means that they couldn't receive any traffic after that time because of the budget was exhausted. 2, their competitor bids drove up Apple's auction prices, making it very expensive for the client to spend on their own brand terms. And 3, the best performant hours or timings for new downloads for that particular application was around breakfast time and early dinner time. And based on that information, we decided that the best strategies to address these issues would be a lead day winning, which in short helps you allocate your budget based on the best performant hours during the day, together with strategic losing, which in short helps you create pressure on your competition and kind of force them from bidding. Now we can switch the slide and check how the strategy actually impacted the performance. On the graph in front of you, you can see hourly impression spikes over one day for a single keyword. These orange bars represent, again, hourly impression spikes before the automation. So we can easily see that the application received impressions somewhere between midnight until 1 p.m. After 1 p.m., we don't really see any impressions, which basically means that the budget was exhausted, so they didn't have even the opportunity to get any traffic afterwards.
Right.
On the next slide, these blue bars shows the immediate impact after we implemented the automation. And right away, we can see how the budget shifted to later hours. So we're still present on the market from midnight, but we still have budget to receive impressions till 6 p.m. And the third slide, you can switch. Yeah, this light orange bars actually shows us the impact of the strategy after 6 months of using it. Right now, we can see that we managed to achieve our budget to cover every single hour of the day. So we now cover the whole day, and we make a special focus on the best performant hours for that application. Now let's speak about the numbers a little bit on the next slide. So this table represents three main periods: the pre-trial period, the trial automation period, or we also call it like early automation internally, and the post-trial automation period. So we have these three main timeframes to showcase how the strategy impacts in the long run. And we have three main metrics that we measured: spend. The goal was to keep around the same level of spend and at the same time achieve better installs rate and better cost per acquisition. And we can see that we managed this task perfectly, I'd say. Then installs, we can see a massive increase in installs because the strategy managed to shift the budget to later hours and basically focus on the best performant hours of that particular application, which resulted in a massive increase of installs. And lastly, cost per acquisition, which was a task for us to decrease, we see a massive decrease and even a better decrease after the long run of the automation to 84%. And this is actually thanks to a strategic losing component of the automation. So instead of simply decreasing your bids at the time when you don't want to win anything, you can take the second highest bid position. So not the winning one, but the losing one, as we call it here. And this will make the competition to increase their bids for the keywords they want to win. So as a result, the competition simply burns their budget early in the day, and now we can pick up the traffic at a very low price. So I think this is a perfect example for everyone here who thinks that protecting their brand is not possible because A, it's expensive, B, they have limited budget, and C, the competition is tough.
Yeah. No, that's a huge, I mean, just the CPA reduction alone, and then the fact that the installs by that more recent reading that was looking at 4 weeks, and the fact that, the average weekly installs have jumped 655% with only a minor increase in budget, which I think they did as a result of the greater efficiencies they were seeing. It's like, okay, we get way more bang for the buck now on this brand protection strategy. And of course, that 6 to 7 p.m. range for food and drink, right? Which obviously prime time dinner hour before, literally like no budget left to hit that period. Now you see a massive spike, which is perhaps where most of that growth is coming from. Let's unpack the final example, and then I want to hit on a couple of questions that are perfect for kind of this last category of, you maybe are in the category of you don't want to spend or you don't want to win anything. So Hamilton, can you take us through this real quick, and then we'll take some questions here.
Yeah, you bet. When you say you want to win nothing, we recommend winning almost nothing. And I want to start with a fictitious story around a company called Muda. I don't think this actually exists. We made this up. It's a company, let's say it's a mood tracking app. They are out advertising on the keyword Moody, Moody, and they're doing really well. Seems like a good keyword for a mood tracking app. Lots of volume, low CPAs, everything seemed to be going great until they do a little deeper dig and they find that they're actually picking up the search term Mooda, their brand term, Mooda. This is unusual because they're advertising on the exact match keyword. In the documents list, you'll see a blog that routes to a blog post called Exact Match Isn't Exactly Exact. And it's not. It's unusual, but it makes sense. What they are doing at Apple is providing you the ability to advertise on a keyword like Moody and not have to worry about the many, many various misspellings that you might have. We often find accounts have all of the misspellings. So there's tons and tons of words that are actually just the same word. You don't need to do that. If it's Moody Day or something to the nature where it's more words, those won't pick up the same search term, but in cases like this, it will. The obvious fix here is to add Muda as a negative keyword to the campaign that is advertising against Moody, which that'll work great. But we recommend not stopping there. In this particular case, we had a customer that fell into something similar, and we recommended that they created a single campaign with a single keyword, a low budget, and an aggressive losing strategy. And the next slide shows how that worked out. So this is that far right column scenario. We are losing almost always. Same layout here. So the spend you can see is relatively low. It stays under $5 for the most part. It's on average about $2. It's a cup of coffee a week. The installs are anywhere from 3 to 20. So it kind of varies. And the CPA, when they do win, they're winning installs at 20 cents an install. So even if these are not very incremental, that's pretty cheap. So they're getting away with putting pressure on whoever is actually winning the bulk of the volume here, making their prices go up. And they're getting away with it with low spend and an outcome that is arguable, or that it's valuable at 20 cents an install. One thing that's interesting on this particular strategy is you got to be vigilant, because things change. It's a dynamic auction. This is very important to remember in all cases. If you see on that right side, that tail jumps up. The spend goes up past $5 on one particular day, and the installs increase. Because the dynamic nature of the market, you need to then lower your price to get back to that losing bid. In this case, the automation did it automatically. It could be that the pressure applied by this caused the person that is winning to lower their bids. And because of that, this customer started getting more volume. It's possible. It's hard to measure that, but whatever the reason, markets do change, and you need to watch it on a more regular basis. But it's a great strategy if you can.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have the numbers of the kind of average daily spend installs CPA, which reinforce what you were talking about.
Right.
Those are three great examples across those categories. Let me, I'm going to share back up the poll that we had open in the background on where folks in the audience sit with their current strategy. And then I want to peel off a couple of these questions here as we round out this quick 30 minutes together. So if you haven't voted already, please do so in this poll. So it looks like right now the fixed budget that runs out every day is slightly ahead, but tied with an other. So if let us know what that other is in the chat in terms of what your strategy is if it doesn't fall into those categories. And then I'm going to open up one of these questions here and share it on screen here. 1 second. And Hamilton or Gera, feel free to answer this, because I know this is a common question. How would you measure brand protection to evaluate that you're not cannibalizing your organic installs? I have some thoughts here, but there's not enough time for me to speak. You go ahead, Hamilton.
Yeah, 100%. So this is a great thing to measure, because we really do care about incrementality, and what strategy you should fit into really is determined by how incremental your brand spend is. So when you're looking at your installs, if you have an MMP, it's going to give you a really good indication of which of those installs came in organically and which were attributed. As you start to make changes to your brand strategy, it's going to change the way that you view the total attributed installs within Apple Search Ads, but it doesn't show you what's going on with organic. Your MMP can. And you're looking to see if you make changes that decrease your attributed installs, those that are coming in from paid ads, does it change the total attributed plus organic? If that changes in a negative way, that means you are decreasing your spend and it's actually coming at the expense of those ultimate outcomes. If it stays exactly the same, that means that your spend previously was probably not incremental at all. So the answer to this question is it comes within the MMP. If we're doing a trial with you and you are interested in this data point, we will help you measure that if you have an MMP that is sophisticated enough to tell you this. Kochava has one. I definitely am biased, but that's really the method that you would take.
Yeah, and it probably depends on brand equity as well, to an extent, like the examples you gave earlier about Kleenex versus FIFA.
Right.
No doubt you are going to have some cannibalization if you're spending on brand terms, but there's also that counterpoint of, well, if you do nothing, and you aren't competitive at all in the bidding for your own terms, then how much more incremental do you make it for the competition? There's definitely some studies you can do on that.
Yeah, something that's really interesting in this companies that we work with is that they'll have two departments, two different people, one responsible for organic and one responsible for paid. And those two don't often talk or interact. And so then you have the paid get outsourced to, say, an agency who is driven on lowering the CPA, which means most of their budget's going to shift towards brand. They'll claim victory because, look, we just increased the number of incremental or attributed installs at a lower rate because they're spending on brand, but they're actually just stealing from the other person, the other department. So measuring that is actually really important, and it's oftentimes mixed incentive structures within corporations that cause weird things to happen.
Yeah. Here's another question from Rianne Bradshaw. Is there even a point in spending less than $1,000 monthly on Apple search ads?
Wow, that's a great question. So if you are less than 1,000, I think the answer is you can still get value. There's nothing magical that happens at a point of volume. When you spend 1,000, you do want to be particularly careful about placing that 1,000 in the place that you find to be the most impactful. And measuring success might be difficult if the number of in-app events you're trying to drive is not high enough to give you certainty around which keywords are working and which ones are not. So it gets to be very difficult to test, but I would say that you can oftentimes find value still, even if it's low dollar amount.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it looks like the after longer voting period, it looks like winner at around 31% about is the win, 100% impression share at all costs. Yeah. And then second place is fixed budget that runs out every day. And we have a mix of those that aren't spending on brand either because no budget or feel that brand spend isn't worth it. So wherever you sit on the spectrum, if you want to chat further with Hamilton and Gera and the team, there's a request consultation button up at the top there. Feel free to click that if you'd like to connect with us after this. Short 30 minutes, but packed full of interesting insights and anecdotal evidence from the field. Again, the Docs tab resource, check out. There's links to Hamilton and Gera on LinkedIn where you can get in touch with them right after this and message them. I'm going to close that poll now and stop sharing those results. And we'll launch a survey here at the end. Let us know how helpful this was. And if you have any other questions, and then there were some questions that came in during registration as well. We were not able to get to those, but we will follow up with you after the webinar directly over email. So Gera and Hamilton, thank you for the time today. Really appreciate the insights, and we did it all in under 30 minutes.
We made it.
Nice. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jeffrey.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your day, evening, wherever you may be across the globe, and hope to see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.